Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.
Southeast Radio.
Welcome back to Southeast Radio's Business Matters with me, Karl Fitzpatrick. My next guest, Joe O'Connor, has worked as a strength and conditioning coach with many teams across the country, but through his business CoachPACT, he is looking to help time-poor business people to improve their productivity. Joe, by way of introduction, can you tell us about your role with the Clare and Limerick All-Ireland winning hurling teams?
Yeah, I suppose down through the years worked with a good few teams. Wasn't too far away from yourselves as well. I was working at Waterford there for 2 years, but my role centres around fitness and nutrition and overall health and well-being and trying to link everything into performance. So I suppose sometimes the term goes down as strength and conditioning coach, sometimes it's nutrition coach, but I suppose with my own education background I span both areas.
So what is CoachPACT and why did you decide to set up this business?
I suppose the key client for CoachPACT is someone who is time poor and working in business, and they appreciate that health and fitness, nutrition and lifestyle coaching can help improve their professional performance. And I suppose why we set up that business is that we saw a niche in the market that there's lots of people out there that are very, very busy and often too busy to exercise or to look after themselves until they have to. And I suppose what we want to do is to be able to give a solution to people, to be able to say, right, we can keep you going, but we'll factor in health and recovery so that you can keep going for the longevity of your career.
Now, health and fitness has never been more prominent in the Irish psyche, but as a result, the market has never been as saturated with health-based businesses. With that in mind, how did you manage to stand out from the crowd?
I suppose like any business, you find your niche and, you go after that. We don't try to be everything to everyone. I suppose as a wellness provider, we don't look at coming on site and providing lots and lots of different workshops. We're predominantly cloud-based. And we introduce different metrics and different methods to reward people's effort more so than their fitness. So I think standing out from the crowd with gamification and remote coaching gives us an opportunity to work with companies that have many locations, maybe have many departments in different areas around the county or around the country or in a region as well. So I think that's a niche that we feel that our strengths are best suited towards.
And what are the most common reasons that someone would engage your services?
I suppose we have two prongs. One is the head of the business or the head of the departments who are maybe the entrepreneur or the spearhead of the company, and have found themselves with either years and years of backlogged work and intensity and stress and pressure and need to do something for themselves, and whether that's been encouraged by the medical sector where they may have got a health scare and say, right, you either need to lose weight or you need to look at managing your lifestyle, or they may have looked and said, right, I need to set another goal in my life outside of business so that they can get the work-life balance right. And then I suppose the second aspect of it is where we're looking at creating an atmosphere within a company's team and seeing how can we get something that they can all gear towards themselves that will improve their health, their well-being, but also their performance in the workplace.
So what type of work do you do with entrepreneurs and business owners? One
of the main things we look at there is their overall lifestyle. Like whenever we sit down with someone, we say, look, there's 168 hours in the week, and you can't be going hard for 168 hours for that long. You're going to crash and burn. And I suppose a lot of the time when we're doing workshops on looking at work-life balance, we talk about saying, how can you switch off? Because if you're on all the time, eventually you're going to burn off. And sometimes off can be golf for some people, it can be mountain hiking for others, it might be just a walk on the beach, it might be playing a bit of soccer, whatever it is. But we try to work with them to say, right, how can we get the balance that you're an on-off person so that when you do come to work, you're 100% on. But also when you go away from work, you're off. Because what we see with top performers, whether it's in elite sport or in business, they're on-off people. That when they're focused on something, they're 110% focused on it. They're not 85% focused, they're 100% focused. But you can't reach that level of focus if you don't have a period where you can switch off and tune out a little bit so that you can come back with fresh eyes on a problem.
I'm sure many people in business find it difficult to turn that switch off. What's the key to that?
I think putting a plan in place and, looking at your ability to cope. Like the World Health Organization there has a phrase like, how they define stress. They put it down as the response people may have when presented with demands and pressures that are not matched to their knowledge and abilities and which challenge their ability to cope. Now, the key word there is cope. And I think an awful lot of people there, they work themselves till they have to stop rather than saying, right, I'm going to undulate this and I'm going to put in a coping mechanism that when I feel the jet's burning, that I know what I can do just to look after my health, both physical and mental, so that I can give everything in the workplace. So getting in there and identifying that at the start. And, it's very hard to exercise. It's very hard to look after your sleep and your well-being and your nutrition if you don't have a clear goal. So goal setting as well is very, very important. It's like a business plan. If you don't have a plan and a vision and a mission, we don't really know where we're going. And it's the same when it comes to health and fitness, nutrition and performance.
Well, if you've just tuned in, I'm speaking to the founder of CoachPACT, Joe O'Connor. Joe, we all know that business people can be time-poor individuals, and as a consequence, health and fitness often falls down their list of priorities. Apart from setting goals, what advice could you impart to our listeners to address this aspect of their lives?
Yeah, look, fitness does go down, and you have to look at the minimal effective dose, or the MED as we call it, and to say, right, I don't have the time to do everything, so I have to make sure that the quality of what I do is very good, simply because they don't have time. And there's a few different types of people that we'd often meet. The type of person who'll say, right, I'll do nothing for 10 days, and then they might have 2 days off and they'll go mad and do more harm than good because they've done too much in one go, which is very bad. Or other people will say, look, I'll get through this busy period and then I'll do something about it. A profession that often comes to mind are accountants. When it comes to year end, they'll lock themselves into a bunker until everything is done. Or in my own profession as a lecturer, we often find ourselves at coming to the end of semesters when there's a load of corrections to be done. We just lock ourselves away and try to get everything done, and then crash and burn and have to stop at the other side of it. So to answer your question, Karl, basically it's to find that minimal effective dose that's relative to their goal.
And for those that currently aren't involved in any level of exercise on a weekly basis, what is the minimum amount of time that they should really be putting into exercise per week?
Yeah, look, if I was to give you the lecture answer and say that the World Health Organization says 150 minutes of low-intensity activity or 75 minutes of moderate-intensity activity as the minimum anyone should be doing, regardless of how busy or how successful they are, that's the minimum. That's the textbook answer. There's other people that would say, look, I will do this, but it's down my list of priorities. And what I like to say to people is, look, if you can double up on this and basically say, right, can we do the minimum, but actually double it up? So I'm not a huge fan of people going into the forest with earphones on, listening to podcasts or listening back to audio recordings or whatever. But if it means that's the only way they'll get their 40-minute walk in for the day, we'll do it. It's about really finding that opportunity to do the minimum effective dose. We're talking 20 minutes, 25 minutes a day. That's what we're looking at. And that's a walk from your car to the office if you time it right, 10 minutes each way.
Now, Joe, stress is a negative word in a business or workplace environment, but is there such a thing as positive stress, in your opinion?
Absolutely. And I suppose as someone who comes from an exercise science background, stress was in its earliest form was identified within the exercise science community by a researcher called Hans Selye. And basically he's an endocrinologist that was looking at hormones. And I suppose to cut a long story short, he came to a few conclusions in relation to stress, and he called it his general adaptation syndrome, or GAS principle. And basically what that states is that in order for your body to develop a resistance to stress, it has to get used to a stress. So if I was to put it in layman's terms, Karl, if you were to go into the gym and you were to lift some weights, you will damage your muscle fibers by lifting those weights. But you go home and you rest and you recover. And the subsequent result of that is that when you come back to the gym, you're going to be stronger. Therefore, you have to lift a heavier weight to challenge that muscle. Now, that muscle would have never got stronger if it didn't initially have the stress of the initial weight. And this can also be applied to the mind, that a lot of time people find, I'm not as sharp as I used to be, is a line we often hear. But have you challenged yourself? Have you read books? Have you listened to podcasts? Have you challenged your brain, but also give it the opportunity to recover? Because if you don't challenge your body or your mind, if you don't put certain amounts of stress on your body and your mind, you won't develop the resilience to that. And I suppose the summation of all that is a thing called the growth equation. And the growth equation states that stress plus rest equals growth. But the problem I find with a lot of our clients, and I see it a lot in the business world, is people will keep the stress going and only put in rest when they have to, rather than when they should plan it so that they can go again. And I often make this a comparison when people go on holidays, that can you switch off on day one? Can you switch off in the airport? Or does it take you 2 to 3 days to switch off? Now, if you're not switching off, you're still applying stress to the body. And if you're only gone for a week, you're probably thinking about coming back to work again the following Monday. So although it's reduced amount of stress, you haven't switched off from it.
And how do you differentiate negative stress from positive stress? And what needs to happen when negative stress occurs in a business environment?
Negative stress is a stress that you don't have appropriate rest associated with it. So if you cannot recover from that stress, it's too much stress. So what we need to do is to gradually overload our body. If you're to look at someone training for a marathon, for example, and today they go out and run 5K and they're delighted with themselves, tomorrow they go out and try to do 5 miles, well, that's too much of a jump. And the following day they try to do 10 miles, it's too much of a jump again. Whereas in running terms, we only apply a rule of that you should never go more than 10% of your weekly volume week to week. But we don't apply that in general. So from an exercise science perspective, it becomes a negative stress if there's too much of it with inappropriate rest and recovery associated with it.
And Joe, you're on a growth trajectory with your own business, CoachPACT. What's your objective for the years ahead?
Well, our objective is to establish ourselves within the SME market and, with companies who have 10 to 100 employees. And a lot of those tend to be dispersed across multiple locations. We have a solution that will help with, the health, the fitness, the nutrition, and the lifestyle coaching to help improve those companies' performance, both on an individual basis, but also as a team. And that's where we want to go. And because we're cloud-based, I think we're limited by language, but that's only a temporary limitation. We have clients in Canada, in Australia, obviously all over Ireland and the UK, and we're like any business that's in the growth phase, like Karl, we spoke off air about pivoting and changing. You're always in that phase and you're always changing.
Well, if you've just tuned in, that was Joe O'Connor from CoachPACT, and I'd like to thank Joe for sharing some invaluable advice with business owners located right across the county this morning.
Southeast Radio's Business Matters with Karl Fitzpatrick.